The hotel room smelled of cheap cologne and regret, but for James it was freedom. Every Thursday, he'd slip away from his polished life in suburban Connecticut, leaving behind his wife, Emily, and their 2 kids, to meet him, the man who made his heart race in ways he couldn't explain. One photograph, snapped in a moment of reckless passion, would unravel everything. James adjusted his tie in the mirror of the Grandview Hotel suite, his hands trembling. He was 38, a successful lawyer with a corner office, a devoted wife, and a life that screamed perfection. But perfection was a cage, and every week, he broke free for a few stolen hours with Michael, a painter with eyes like a storm and a laugh that could disarm anyone. Their affair had started 6 months ago, a chance meeting at an art gallery in New York City. James had been there for a client. Michael had been there to sell a canvas. One conversation, one brush of hands, and James was lost. Tonight, the city buzzed outside the window, but inside room 712, it was just them. Michael leaned against the headboard, shirt unbuttoned, sketching James from memory. "You look nervous," he said, his voice low, teasing. "Scared Emily's gonna call?" James forced a smile, his stomach twisting. Emily trusted him too much. She thought his late nights were client meetings, his weekend trips were conferences. The lies came easily now, but each one carved a deeper wound. "I'm fine," he said, sitting beside Michael, their shoulders touching. The warmth of Michael's skin grounded him, made the world feel less heavy. They didn't talk about the future. They didn't talk about Emily or the kids. They just existed, 2 men stealing moments in a world that wouldn't understand. But the world was watching. Across town, a private investigator named Clara sat in her car, her camera resting on the dashboard. Emily had hired her 3 weeks ago, her voice trembling over the phone. "He's distant," she'd said. "He's lying. I need to know why." Clara had followed James, piecing together his routine Thursday nights at the Grandview, always room 712, always with the same man. Tonight, she'd gotten the shot. James and Michael, framed in the hotel window, their silhouettes unmistakable. The photo was grainy, but it was enough. Enough to break a marriage. Enough to ruin a life. James didn't know about Clara. He didn't know about the photo. All he knew was the way Michael's fingers traced his jaw, the way their lips met in a kiss that felt like salvation. "Stay tonight," Michael whispered, his breath warm against James's ear. "All night. Just once." "I can't," James said, pulling back. The guilt was a tidal wave, crashing over him. He thought of Emily tucking their daughter, Lily, into bed, reading stories about princesses. He thought of their son, Max, asking when Daddy would be home. "I have to go back." Michael's face hardened, but he didn't argue. He never did. He just nodded, his eyes searching James's for something, truth, maybe, or courage. "One day you're gonna have to choose," he said quietly. James didn't respond. He couldn't. Choosing meant destroying everything he'd built. His family, his career, his carefully curated image. But as he left the hotel, the night air cold against his skin, he felt the weight of Michael's words. He didn't know that choice was coming sooner than he thought. Clara delivered the photo to Emily the next morning. They sat in Emily's pristine kitchen, the kids at school, the house eerily quiet. Emily stared at the image, her hands shaking. Her James with another man. The betrayal cut deeper than she'd expected, not just because of the affair, but because of the secret he'd kept. She'd loved him for 12 years, built a life with him, and now she saw a stranger. "I'm so sorry," Clara said, her voice professional but soft. "Do you want me to keep digging?" Emily nodded, her jaw tight. "Find out who he is. Find out everything." Clara spent the next week tailing Michael. He lived in a small loft in Brooklyn, taught art classes to kids, and painted late into the night. He was 32, single, openly gay, and seemed to have no idea James was married. Clara's reports were meticulous, but one detail stood out. Michael had been receiving anonymous letters, slipped under his door, warning him to stay away from James. The letters were typed, untraceable, but they were escalating, threats of violence, threats of exposure. Clara didn't tell Emily about the letters. Not yet. She needed more time, more evidence. But the letters gnawed at her. Someone else knew about James and Michael. Someone was watching them too. Meanwhile, James was unraveling. He'd started drinking more, snapping at Emily over small things, avoiding Michael's calls. The guilt was eating him alive, but so was the longing. He loved Emily, or at least he loved the life they had. But Michael was something else, something raw and real that he couldn't let go. He told himself he'd end it, go back to being the perfect husband, the perfect father. But every Thursday he found himself back at the Grandview, back in Michael's arms. One night, Michael showed James the latest letter. "This came yesterday," he said, tossing it onto the bed. The words were vicious. "You're a homewrecker. You'll pay for this." James's blood ran cold. "Who sent this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "I don't know," Michael said, his calm facade cracking. "But they know about us. They know where I live." James felt the walls closing in. He thought of Emily, of the kids, of the life he was risking. "We need to stop," he said, the words tearing at him. "This is too dangerous." Michael's eyes flashed with hurt, then anger. "You're not stopping because it's dangerous," he said. "You're stopping because you're scared. You're scared of being honest, with me, with your wife, with yourself." The fight was brutal, words cutting deeper than either expected. Michael accused James of living a lie. James accused Michael of not understanding the stakes. When James left that night, the door slammed behind him, and he wondered if it was the last time. Emily confronted James a week later. She'd found another photo, slipped under their front door, showing James and Michael in the hotel parking lot. The note attached read, "He's not who you think he is." Emily's hands shook as she held it up, her voice steady but cold. "Who is he, James?" James froze, his mind racing. He'd never seen this photo before. Someone was following them, someone who wanted to hurt him. He stammered, tried to lie, but Emily's eyes stopped him. She knew. She'd known for weeks, piecing it together. The late nights, the excuses, the distance. "I trusted you," she whispered, tears falling. "I loved you." The fight that followed was raw, ugly, and honest. James admitted everything, not just the affair, but the truth he'd buried for years. He was bisexual. He'd known since college but pushed it down. Married Emily. Built a life to hide it. He loved her, he swore he did, but he loved Michael, too. Emily listened, her heart breaking with every word. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She just asked him to leave. James moved into a hotel. Not the Grandview, never the Grandview again. He tried calling Michael, but Michael didn't answer. The anonymous letters kept coming, now to James's office, each one more threatening. "You can't hide anymore. Everyone will know." He hired Clara to find out who was behind them, not knowing she was already working for Emily. Clara's investigation led her to a name. Daniel, a former colleague of James's, fired last year for unethical conduct. Daniel had been obsessed with James, had suspected his secret long before Emily did. The letters were his revenge, his way of exposing James's double life. But there was something else, something Clara uncovered in Daniel's apartment. Photos, dozens of them, not just of James and Michael, but of James's kids, Lily and Max, at school, at the park. Daniel wasn't just angry, he was dangerous. Clara called James and Emily, urging them to meet. "This isn't about your marriage anymore," she said. "Your family's in danger." They sat in a diner, the three of them, tension thick as fog. Clara laid out the evidence. Daniel's letters, his photos, his history of instability. James felt sick. Emily, despite her anger, reached for his hand. "We need to protect the kids," she said, her voice firm. They went to the police, filed a restraining order, and Daniel was arrested the next day. The letters stopped, but the damage was done. James and Emily separated, their marriage a casualty of truth. But in the aftermath, something shifted. Emily, still hurting, started therapy with James, not to rebuild their marriage, but to understand him, to co-parent their kids with honesty. James reached out to Michael, not to rekindle their affair, but to apologize, to thank him for showing him who he could be. Months later, James stood on a rooftop in San Francisco, alone. He'd moved there, started over, come out to his family, his friends. It wasn't easy. Lily and Max struggled with the changes, and Emily was still distant. But he was trying. He was living as himself for the first time, no lies, no cages. He thought of Michael, now teaching art in Seattle, and smiled. They hadn't spoken in months, but the memory of him lingered, a reminder of the courage it took to choose truth. The sunset painted the sky gold, and James felt something new, hope. The photo that had unraveled his life hadn't just exposed a secret, it had set him free. James's new hotel room in Hartford was sterile, a far cry from the warmth of the Grandview's Suite 712. The beige walls and stiff sheets mirrored the emptiness he felt, exiled from his home, his family, his life. Every night, he replayed Emily's words, "I trusted you," and saw the pain in her eyes, a wound he'd inflicted. He hadn't spoken to Michael in weeks. The fight in room 712 had been their last, Michael's accusations ringing true. James was scared. Scared of losing his family, his reputation, his carefully constructed world. But the truth was out now, and there was no going back. He stared at his phone, Michael's number glowing on the screen, his thumb hovering over the call button. He didn't press it. Instead, he poured another glass of whiskey, the burn a poor substitute for courage. Across town, Emily was rebuilding. She'd taken the kids to her sister's for the weekend, needing space from the house that still felt like James. Lily, only 8, kept asking why Daddy wasn't home. Max, 11, was quieter, his anger simmering in silence. Emily didn't have answers, not yet. She sat with Clara's reports, the photos of James and Michael, the anonymous letters. The betrayal was a knife, but the letters scared her more. Someone had been watching her husband, her family, someone who knew too much. Clara, meanwhile, was digging deeper into Daniel's life. The former colleague had a history: stalking complaints, a restraining order from an ex, a grudge against James that went beyond professional rivalry. She found his apartment in New Haven, a cluttered space filled with photos, not just of James and Michael, but of Emily at the grocery store, the kids at soccer practice. Daniel's obsession was a spiderweb, and James's family was caught in it. Clara's gut told her he wasn't just sending letters. He was planning something. She called James, her voice urgent. "You need to be careful," she said. "Daniel's not just angry, he's unhinged. I found blueprints of your house in his apartment. Security camera footage of your kids' school." James's heart stopped. He thought of Lily's gap-toothed smile, Max's quiet courage. "What does he want?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I don't know," Clara admitted, "but he's fixated on you, on destroying you." James hung up, his mind racing. He thought of the letters Michael had shown him, the threats that had driven a wedge between them. He'd assumed they were from a jealous ex, a random stranger. Now the truth was uglier. Daniel wasn't just exposing James's secret, he was targeting his life. James grabbed his coat and drove to Michael's loft in Brooklyn, needing answers, needing to warn him. Michael opened the door, his face a mix of surprise and wariness. "What are you doing here?" he asked, stepping back but not inviting James in. "I need to talk," James said, his voice breaking. "It's not safe. Someone's after us. After me, my family, maybe you." Michael's eyes narrowed, but he let James inside. The loft was cluttered with canvases, paint splattered and raw, a reflection of Michael's heart. James explained everything: Clara's findings, Daniel's obsession, the photos of his kids. Michael listened, his anger softening into concern. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. "I thought you were just running away again." "I was," James admitted. But not anymore. I'm trying to fix this to protect them. And you. Michael didn't respond, but he didn't push James away either. They sat in silence, the weight of their past and the danger of the present filling the space between them. For the first time, James felt the pull of honesty, not just with Michael but with himself. He'd spent years hiding, lying, choosing safety over truth. Now, the truth was all he had left. Emily met with Clara the next day, her resolve hardening. She'd spent weeks drowning in hurt, but her kids needed her to be strong. Clara laid out the evidence. Daniel's criminal record, his fixation on James, the photos that proved he'd been stalking them for months. He's dangerous, Clara said, but he's also sloppy. The police can use this to build a case. Emily nodded, her mind racing. She thought of James, the man she'd loved, the man who'd betrayed her. She hated him for what he'd done, but she couldn't hate him entirely, not when she saw how much he loved their kids. "What do I do?" she asked. "Keep your family safe," Clara said, "and talk to James. He needs to know everything." Emily didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear his voice, but she called him. They met at a park, the kids playing nearby, their laughter a stark contrast to the tension between their parents. James looked broken, his eyes red, his shoulders slumped. "I'm so sorry," he said before she could speak. "I never meant for any of this." Emily wanted to scream, to demand why he'd lied, why he'd chosen someone else. But she saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear she felt for Lily and Max. "This isn't about us anymore," she said. "It's about them. We need to stop this guy." They agreed to work together, not as husband and wife, but as parents. James told her about Daniel, about the letters, about his visit to Michael. Emily flinched at Michael's name, but she pushed it aside. "Does he know about the kids?" she asked. "I don't know," James said, "but I won't let anything happen to them. Or to you." For the first time in weeks, Emily believed him. Not because she trusted him again, but because she saw the man she'd once loved, the man who'd do anything for their family. Clara's investigation hit a breakthrough. She found a burner phone in Daniel's apartment, filled with texts to an unknown number. The messages were cryptic but chilling. "He'll pay soon. The family's next." Clara traced the number to a prepaid phone, untraceable, but the text confirmed her worst fears. Daniel wasn't working alone. Someone else was involved, someone with a grudge as deep as his. She shared the findings with James and Emily, urging them to go to the police. "This is bigger than we thought," she said. "You need protection now." The police moved quickly, setting up surveillance around Emily's house, assigning an officer to watch the kids' school. James stayed in Hartford, checking in with Clara daily, his fear growing with every new detail. He tried calling Michael again, needing to know he was safe, but Michael's phone went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. Had Daniel gone after him? Had James dragged Michael into this nightmare? He drove to Brooklyn again, his heart pounding. Michael's loft was dark, the door locked. James knocked, called out, but no one answered. He was about to leave when he saw it. A new letter, taped to the door. "You can't run from the truth." Inside was a photo not of James or Michael, but of Emily, taken that morning as she dropped the kids at school. James's knees buckled. He called Clara, his voice shaking. "He's after her now. He's after my family." Clara didn't hesitate. "Get to Emily. I'm calling the police." James sped back to Connecticut, his mind a blur of fear and guilt. He'd thought his secret was the worst thing he could lose. Now, he realized it was nothing compared to losing the people he loved. James's car screeched into Emily's driveway, the house glowing warmly against the dusk. He didn't know if he was welcome, but he didn't care. The photo of Emily, taken just hours ago, burned in his mind. Daniel was closing in and James was done hiding. Emily opened the door, her face pale. "What's wrong?" she asked, sensing his panic. The kids were inside, watching a movie, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. James handed her the letter, the photo trembling in his grip. "He's watching you," he said. "We need to get you and the kids somewhere safe." Emily's eyes widened, but she didn't falter. She'd always been stronger than James gave her credit for. "The police are already here," she said, nodding toward an unmarked car across the street. "Clara called them. They're watching the house." James exhaled, relief mixing with dread. "I'm so sorry," he said again, the words hollow but heavy. "This is my fault." Emily didn't disagree, but she didn't attack him either. "We need to focus on the kids," she said, her voice steady. "They're scared, James. They don't understand why you're gone, why I'm acting like this. We need to tell them something." James nodded, his throat tight. He'd spent years shielding Lily and Max from his truth. But now, his lies had put them in danger. "I'll talk to them," he said. "But first, we need to find Michael. He's not answering his phone. I'm worried Daniel got to him." Emily's jaw tightened at Michael's name, but she didn't argue. "Go," she said. "I'll stay with the kids. The police will handle Daniel." James drove back to Brooklyn, his heart pounding. Michael's loft was still dark, but this time, the door was ajar. He pushed it open, calling Michael's name, his voice echoing in the empty space. Paint cans were overturned, canvases slashed. Someone had been here. James's stomach dropped as he found another letter on the floor. "You took everything from me. Now I take from you." He called Clara, his hands shaking. "Daniel's been in Michael's apartment. It's trashed. I can't find him." Clara was already on her way, her voice calm but urgent. "Stay there. Don't touch anything. I'm calling the police." While waiting, James searched the loft, desperate for any sign of Michael. He found a sketchbook under a pile of broken frames. Michael's handwriting scrawled across the pages. It was a letter, unfinished, addressed to James. "I loved you, but I can't keep living in your shadow. I deserve more than stolen moments. I hope you find the courage to be who you are." The words hit James like a punch. Michael had been ready to walk away, but now he might be in danger because of James's choices. The police arrived, followed by Clara. They confirmed Daniel had been spotted in Brooklyn earlier that day, but he'd slipped through their net. "He's escalating," Clara said. "He's not just targeting you anymore. He wants to hurt everyone connected to you." James felt the weight of his decisions crushing him. His affair, his lies, his cowardice. They'd created a ripple effect, endangering the people he loved most. "We need to find Michael," he said. "He doesn't deserve this." Clara nodded, pulling out her laptop. She'd been tracking Daniel's burner phone, and the last signal had come from a warehouse district near the waterfront. "It's a long shot," she said, "but it's all we've got." James insisted on going with her, despite her protests. The warehouse was dark, abandoned, the air thick with dust and the tang of rust. They moved quietly, flashlights cutting through the shadows. Then they heard it, a muffled groan from the back of the building. James's heart leapt as he recognized Michael's voice. They found him tied to a chair, bruised but alive. Daniel stood over him, a knife in his hand, his eyes wild. "You thought you could hide?" he spat at James. "You thought you could live your lie and no one would care?" Clara drew her gun, her voice steady. "Drop the knife, Daniel. It's over." Daniel laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "It's not over until he loses everything, like I did." James stepped forward, his hands raised. "This is about me, not him. Let him go." Daniel's grip on the knife tightened, but Clara didn't hesitate. She fired a warning shot, the sound deafening in the empty warehouse. Daniel froze, then dropped the knife, his bravado crumbling. The police swarmed in, cuffing him, while James untied Michael, his hands shaking. "I'm sorry," James whispered, helping Michael to his feet. "I never wanted this." Michael didn't respond, his face unreadable. He was shaken but alive, and for now that was enough. Back in Connecticut, Emily sat with the kids, explaining as much as she could without breaking their world apart. "Daddy's going through something," she said, her voice soft. But he loves you, and he's trying to keep us safe. Lily cried, clinging to her mother, while Max stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Emily held them both, her own heart aching. She didn't know if she could forgive James, but she knew they had to move forward, together, for their kids. The police took Daniel into custody, his apartment yielding more evidence, plans to target James's family, a manifesto of his grievances. He'd blamed James for his firing, for his ruined career, but his obsession had twisted into something darker, something personal. The second phone number remained a mystery, but the immediate threat was gone. James visited Michael the next day, finding him at a friend's apartment, recovering. "I'm done," Michael said, his voice quiet but firm. "I can't do this anymore, James. I can't be your secret." James nodded, the pain sharp but deserved. "I know," he said. "I'm trying to be better. Not for you, not for Emily, but for me. I want to be someone my kids can be proud of." Michael's eyes softened, but he didn't reach out. "I hope you find that," he said. "But it's not my fight anymore." James left, the door closing softly behind him. He drove back to Hartford, the city lights blurring through his tears. He'd lost Michael, maybe Emily, but he hadn't lost himself. Not yet. He thought of the rooftop in San Francisco, a place he'd never been but dreamed of, a place where he could be free. He wasn't there yet, but he was closer than he'd ever been. The police station smelled of stale coffee and desperation. James sat across from Detective Harris, a grizzled man with kind eyes, recounting everything. Daniel's threats, the letters, the warehouse. His hands shook as he spoke, the weight of his choices pressing down. Emily was safe, the kids were safe, Michael was safe. But James felt anything but. "We've got Daniel in custody," Harris said, flipping through a file. "He's not talking, but the evidence is solid. Stalking, harassment, attempted kidnapping. He's not going anywhere for a while." James nodded, relief warring with guilt. "What about the second phone number?" he asked. "Clara said he was texting someone." Harris frowned. "Still working on it. Prepaid phones are hard to trace. But we'll keep digging." James left the station, the cold air biting at his face. He hadn't gone back to Emily's house, not because she'd asked him not to, but because he couldn't face the kids yet. He'd hurt them, even if they didn't fully understand how. He checked into a new hotel, a cheap one near the station, and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed, a text from Emily. "Kids want to see you. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. My house." He typed a reply, deleted it, typed again. "I'll be there." Simple words, but they felt like a lifeline. The next day, James stood at Emily's door, his heart pounding. Lily ran to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. "Daddy!" she cried, her voice muffled. Max hung back, his arms crossed, his eyes guarded. James knelt, pulling Lily close, his gaze meeting Max's. "I'm sorry I've been gone," he said, his voice thick. "I'm here now." Max didn't respond, but he didn't turn away either. Emily watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk later," she said. "After the kids." James spent the afternoon with Lily and Max, playing board games, answering Lily's endless questions, trying to bridge the gap with Max's silence. When they went to bed, Emily led him to the kitchen. "I've been thinking," she said, pouring coffee. "About us. About what happens next." James braced himself. "I know I broke everything," he said. "I don't expect you to forgive me." Emily's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "I don't know if I can. But I don't hate you, James. I see you trying, and that matters. For the kids, we need to figure out how to be a family, even if it's not the one we planned." James nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "I want to be honest," he said. "I'm bisexual. I've known for years, but I was too scared to admit it. I thought I could bury it, be the husband you deserved. I was wrong." Emily listened, her hands wrapped around her mug. "I wish you'd told me," she said. "Not just about him, but about you. We could have faced it together. The words hung between them, a fragile bridge over the chasm of their past. They talked for hours not about reconciliation, but about co-parenting, about therapy, about giving the kids stability. It wasn't love, not anymore, but it was respect, and that was enough for now. Clara called the next morning with news. "We found the second phone," she said. "It was registered to a woman named Sarah, Daniel's sister. She's been helping him, feeding him information about you and Emily." James's stomach dropped. "Why?" he asked. "Jealousy," Clara said. "She thought you had the perfect life, perfect job, perfect family. She and Daniel fed off each other's resentment. She's in custody now, but she's talking. Says she never meant for it to go this far." James felt the pieces falling into place, the puzzle of his unraveling life taking shape. Sarah had worked at his law firm years ago, a quiet woman who'd left abruptly. He hadn't thought of her since, but she'd been watching, waiting, her anger simmering alongside Daniel's. The police tightened security around Emily's house, but with Daniel and Sarah in custody, the immediate danger was gone. James felt a flicker of relief, but it was overshadowed by the work ahead. He needed to rebuild not just his family but himself. He started therapy, a small office in Hartford where he could finally say the words out loud. "I'm bisexual. I'm figuring out what that means." The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, listened without judgment, helping him untangle years of shame and fear. He began writing letters to Lily and Max, not to send yet, but to process what he wanted them to know when they were older. He wrote about love, about mistakes, about the courage to be true. He didn't contact Michael, respecting his need for space, but he kept the sketchbook, the unfinished letter, a reminder of what he'd felt, what he'd lost. He started volunteering at a local LGBTQ center, not as a savior, but as someone learning, listening, finding community. For the first time, he felt like he was moving toward something, not running away. Emily, too, was healing. She joined a support group for spouses of queer partners, a place to voice her anger, her grief, her hope. She didn't want James back, but she wanted him in their kids' lives. They set boundaries, weekly dinners, shared custody, open communication. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. One evening, James took the kids to the park, watching Lily chase Max across the grass. A man approached, older, with a gentle smile. "You've got great kids," he said, nodding toward them. "I'm Tom. My son's over there." James glanced at the boy, about Max's age, kicking a soccer ball. "Thanks," he said, hesitating. "I'm James." Tom stayed, chatting about parenting, about life. There was no agenda, no spark, just connection. But as James walked away, he felt something new. A possibility. A future where he could be himself without fear. He looked at his kids, laughing under the fading sun, and made a silent promise. To be the father they deserved, to be the man he was meant to be. The road was long, but he was walking it. San Francisco's skyline stretched before James, the Golden Gate Bridge a faint silhouette in the fog. He stood on a rooftop, the wind tugging at his jacket, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He'd moved here 3 months ago, chasing a new start, a place where he could be James. Not the lawyer, not the husband, not the liar, but himself. The move hadn't been easy. Lily cried when he told her. Max withdrew even further, and Emily's goodbye was polite but distant. But they'd worked out a schedule, visits every month, video calls every week. James was determined to stay in their lives, to earn their trust. He'd taken a job at a smaller law firm, one that valued his skills but didn't demand his soul. He was rebuilding piece by piece. Therapy had become his anchor. Dr. Patel's voice echoed in his mind. "You don't have to be perfect, James. You just have to be honest." He was trying. He'd come out to his parents, his siblings, his old friends. Some embraced him. Others turned away. It hurt, but it was real, and real was what he needed. He thought of Michael often, the man who'd cracked open his world. He'd heard through mutual friends that Michael was thriving in Seattle, teaching art, dating someone new. James was happy for him even if it stung. He hadn't reached out, respecting Michael's boundaries, but he carried the lessons Michael had taught him. Love wasn't enough without courage, without truth. Emily was moving forward, too. She'd started dating a quiet man named Paul, a teacher who made her laugh. James met him once, during a custody handoff, and saw the way Emily's eyes lit up. It hurt, but it also freed him. She deserved happiness, and so did he. The kids were adjusting. Lily sent him drawings, bright and chaotic, filled with love. Max was slower to warm, but he'd started texting James short messages, but they were something. Last week he'd written, "Miss you, Dad." James had cried for an hour. Clara called occasionally, updating him on Daniel and Sarah. They'd both pleaded guilty, facing years in prison. The second phone number had led to Sarah, whose resentment had fueled Daniel's obsession. The case was closed, but the scars remained. James still checked his locks, still glanced over his shoulder, but the fear was fading. He'd found a community in San Francisco, friends at the LGBTQ center, colleagues who knew his story and didn't flinch. He wasn't dating, not yet, but he was open to it. For the first time, he could imagine a life where love didn't mean secrets. One evening, he attended a gallery opening, a small event showcasing local artists. He wandered the room, sipping wine, when a painting caught his eye. A storm of blues and grays, a figure standing alone but unbroken. It reminded him of Michael, of himself. The artist, a young woman named Lena, approached. "What do you see in it?" she asked. "Hope," James said, surprising himself. "Strength after a storm." Lena smiled. "That's exactly what I wanted." They talked for hours, not about romance, but about art, life, the courage to create. As James left, he felt a spark. Not of love, but of possibility. He was 39 now, starting over, but he wasn't afraid. The photo that had shattered his life had also set him free, forcing him to face himself, to choose truth over safety. He walked back to his apartment, the city alive around him. The fog was thick, but the lights shone through, guiding him home. He thought of Lily and Max, of Emily's strength, of Michael's courage. He thought of the man he was becoming, one step at a time. On his balcony, he looked out at the city, the wind carrying the promise of tomorrow. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he'd face it as himself, flawed, honest, and finally free.